Hello and welcome to another history episode of Keep the Flame Alive, the podcast for fans of the Olympics and Paralympics. If you love the games, we are the show for you. I am your host, Jill Jaracz, joined as always by my lovely co-host, Alison Brown. Alison, hello, how are you?
I am so depressed by my story.
You and me both.
So yeah, we're going to be talking cheaters and cheaters and cheaters today.
Yeah, this was one month where I went, we called this the greatest games ever. Huh, okay.
Well, my story is the greatest cheating scandal ever, apparently. That's what people say. So greatest can be applied in many ways.
Well, we will get to that in a moment, but next episode will be a major milestone for us. We will have hit episode number 400 of our regular episodes, not including daily coverage. We're super excited and really proud to hit this mark. We've been in the game a long time and not everybody stays in this long. So we are really proud and grateful to you all for making this possible for everyone involved and having a great community to celebrate the games with. We will be recording episode number 400 on Monday, July 14th. That is this coming Monday from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern. And we would love you to join us for that recording. You will be able to hop in and out of the conversation as you are able to. So we will have a recording studio set up, and you can go to tinyurl.com/400party to get the link to join us. We can have like up to 9 people total at a time. So say hello, celebrate with us, reminisce, talk about the future games, and just have a lot of fun. Or, as Alison said,
Virtual party. Oh, I thought I was going to have to do that again live. I was ready. And we have invited some former guests who may pop in and out. So
that would be lovely.
that would be fun.
So we are very excited to celebrate with you. Again, that's Monday, July 14th from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern. Find the link at tinyurl.com/400party. So this is our monthly history episode in which we look back at one particular games all throughout 2025. That games is Sydney 2000, as it's the 25th anniversary of those games that IOC president Juan Samaranch said were the best ever.
How often did he say that? Pretty much to everybody but Atlanta.
But because they kept getting better and better. But
Fair
Sydney
enough.
really was. It did make a mark. So this month from the Paralympics, Alison is talking about intellectually disabled basketball. I am tackling Olympic road cycling. Alison, take it away.
Okay, so I did not remember this story at all, which surprises me because it is the biggest scandal pretty much in Paralympic history. And we start back in 1986 when the International Sports Federation for Athletes with Intellectual Disabilities was formed. And they wanted to encourage sport participation for people with intellectual disabilities. They flip-flop between ID and intellectual disabilities, so I'm probably going to do the same as I'm saying this over and over again. And in 1992, INIS held its own version of the Paralympics, and that sort of got the Paralympics attention. As we've seen before, people don't like when you take their thunder. And so the International Paralympic Committee decided to include ID swimming and athletics in Atlanta in 96. And INIS said, that's great, but let's do more. Let's have more athletes with intellectual disabilities participating.
And just to clarify, like this is different from Special Olympics because Special Olympics is really anybody can come and participate. This, we have like a qualification system.
Yes. So it's the same qualification system as you would for any of the other classifications. So they still have to play international games. They still have to reach a certain level of elite competition. And for Sydney 2000, they decided to add basketball ID, which is how it's listed in all the records. And just so we're all talking the same words, in this definition of intellectual disability, the IQ is below 70, and limitations in two or more adaptive skill areas with an onset prior to age 18. And adapted skill areas in this case would be things like focus, strategic thinking, appropriate response to circumstances, and balance. So it seemed pretty clear what the intention was of who these athletes would be. So in the spring of 1999, a friend of 25-year-old Spaniard Carlos Ribagorda contacted him to say that the players on Spain's ID basketball team were not disabled at all. And would Ribagorda be interested in meeting them and seeing what the team was about? So the friend arranged for him to accompany the team on a trip to Lisbon to play Portugal's ID team. And Ribagorda played basketball before giving it up to go to university. So he had always been kind of a club player. So he had kept his hands in basketball. But watching this team on the bus, he figured out pretty quickly that something didn't seem right. It seemed to him that the Spanish players were not intellectually disabled at all. So at dinner after the game, the team manager, Eduardo Garcia, told Ribagorda that Spain had sent a team, including four players without intellectual disability, to the World Cup in 1998 and hadn't gotten caught. And they planned to send a team with even more fakes to the 1999 European Championships and the Sydney 2000 Paralympics. Would Carlos be interested in joining the team? Garcia indicated that no one was really checking on the status of ID players, and Ribagorda said he would think about it. With an official letter inviting him to join the team, Ribagorda went to see his editor, Carlos Salas, at Capital Magazine. Turns out Carlos is a journalist. So you're not just approaching some random 25-year-old guy who likes basketball. He's also a journalist. So he and his editor sit down and say, should he do this? And they agreed that he should, that he would basically do an inside undercover investigation of this. But it goes a little too far. So over the next 2 years, Ribagorda played with the team, including at the European Championships. He says that manager Garcia told the players to pretend to have difficulties when checking into hotels. They were ordered to avoid the press. Players grew beards and wore hats to avoid being recognized. And even sometimes when they were playing, the coaches would tell them, wait, you got to back off a little bit because you're acting too good.
Whoa! But we have an undercover journalist who gets swept all up in this stuff, but nobody knows he's a journalist.
Correct.
So don't talk to the press. Don't talk to your teammate.
Exactly. So through all these tournaments, Spain qualifies for the Paralympics. They head to Sydney. So 8 teams competed in the Paralympic basketball ID tournament, and Spain was so much better than the other teams. They beat Portugal by 15 points, Poland by 30, Brazil by 56 points, and Japan by 67 points.
Whoa.
Other team officials and coaches are watching with growing discomfort and confusion. They understand that something is not right with this Spanish team, but I don't think they could quite imagine the level of malfeasance that was going on here. So, Australian coach Tony Gillett, who was interviewed much later, said he had suspicions at the time, but he was afraid to voice them because he couldn't quite put it into words why he was so uncomfortable. And he said, quote, "We had our concerns that there may have been something going on, but we couldn't put our finger on it."
Wow, and that's so frustrating, I would imagine. 'Cause again, time is passing and this team is racking up wins.
And not just wins, and not even just blowouts. Like, this is like a professional team playing a high school team in terms of the difference of skill level. And and I don't think people could put their finger on it because they couldn't imagine that it's one thing for one individual athlete to cheat or to try and class dope. We've talked about that, or saying, "Oh, that person is faking how disabled they are." But for an entire organization to put together this level of malfeasance and lying and fraud, I think was beyond anyone's imagination.
They obviously weren't looking at the world of cycling.
Yeah, I mean, this is before all of that, and it's the Paralympics, and I think especially 25 years ago, there was a purity that we
Mhm.
believed in the Paralympics. We're just starting to see a lot of doping cases now. So I think people just believed in the goodness of other souls and were wrong. So in the gold medal game, Spain was undefeated. They come against Russia, who had been the pre-tournament favorite. Spain wins by 24 points.
Wow.
But winning the gold medal, sort of like when Vanilli won the, Grammy, how
Right,
that
right.
made it
Mhm.
unravel, winning the gold medal is what unravels this fraud.
Well, so we need to take a step back because us
Okay.
saying Milli Vanilli, we know what we're talking about. Maybe listeners, if you don't know, back in the 80s, there was this German pop duo called Milli Vanilli, and they had a song called Girl, You Know It's True, and they won the Grammy, and later it came out they were lip syncing everything. They won big time Grammys. It was a huge scandal that they were lip syncing during every part of their album, and that's what we're looking at the level of the here, although I guess there is a Girl You Know It's True movie that came out in 2023.
Oh, well, we know what we're doing after we record. But when you win the gold medal in the Paralympics or when you win a Grammy, people start looking at you with a lot more scrutiny. But most importantly, you get your face out there. So the next day after the gold medal, a photo appeared of the team on the cover of Marca, which is one of Spain's big sports daily newspapers. And the staff at the newspaper started getting all these phone calls saying, I know that guy. He doesn't have any disabilities. He's a police officer. He's an architect. He's an engineer. These were professionals who had college educations and advanced degrees and very high level jobs that somebody that you would expect with intellectual disabilities would not be. This is not learning disabilities. This is not somebody with a dyslexia. This is someone who's supposed to have an IQ lower than 70 and can't dress appropriately for the weather. But no, he's an engineer. So now we've got all the rumors swirling. Press are starting to investigate. And this is where Carlos Ribagorda drops the hammer. In November 2000, just days after the Paralympics ends, Capital Magazine publishes the article where he reveals everything that has happened,
Wow.
how he was involved, how he was never tested. 10 out of the 12 players on the Spanish team, and Ribagorda says, along with several other Spanish ID athletes who competed at the Paralympics, did not have intellectual disabilities at all. The article claimed that Spanish coaches and officials were complicit in the deception and that prospective players for the team were never given any psychological or IQ tests. Evaluation included taking your blood pressure and being asked to do a few push ups.
Wow. Well, and it's what's really sad is that they waited until the highest level. So you've totally ruined this tournament and made a bad mark. However, when do you expose such fraud? And if things aren't being tested, was it just Spain wasn't testing, or was that a problem at the IPC level?
It was a problem throughout. It seemed like Spain took advantage of that to a very high level. But we've seen in other sports, there was inconsistency in testing across different countries.
What
in
a
in
shame.
many different classifications. So I think now when we talk to Paralympic athletes and they talk about what they go through for classification, it's because of stiff stuff like this.
Wow.
And Ribagorda took a hit for this, obviously, as a journalist saying you went too far. And he was in fact charged in the fraud case. But
Whoa!
we're going to get to that in a second. And the IPC did not sit on their hands. A month later, in December, Spain is ordered to return the gold medals. They were not reallocated.
Really?
So now, if you look at official records, there is no gold medalist listed
Oh, wow.
for basketball ID at Sydney.
Well, yeah, in a way, because we never would know what the results would have been had they been playing fairly the whole time. So, where would they have landed in their pool? Where would they have landed in all of the final events? Would they have even made the final?
And it threw off everybody else's point allocation as
Right?
well. And then, of course,
Ah,
there are questions. Nothing formal was ever made against any other team, but it sort of put into question the whole ID classification and
right.
saying, well, if this team was able to do this, what about everybody else? No other team was ever truly accused or no evidence was ever found, but it uncovered how unfair and untested all these players were.
Right. And that still kind of lingers today
We're
because
going to
there's
get to that.
Oh, okay. Well, I will sit back.
So I mentioned that there was a fraud case brought in Spanish court, but nobody really ever had to pay for this. Of the 19 people charged with crimes in connection to the scandal, including the 10 players, including the journalist, only Fernando Martin Vicente, president of the Spanish Sports Federation for the Mentally Disabled, was convicted of fraud, and not until 2013, and he was only sentenced to pay a fine of 5,400 euros, which is a little more than $7,000. Vicente maintains his innocence, claiming he only agreed to plead guilty in exchange for dismissing the charges against the other defendants and to end the investigation. Vincent
Wow.
Vincente, who became involved in ID sports after his baby daughter was diagnosed with severe intellectual disabilities, called the charges against him, quote, absurd and unfounded.
Wow.
So he is the only person to ever plead guilty in Spanish court to this case.
And yet maintains his innocence. So someone here is guilty.
There are probably a lot of guilty
Yeah.
people, and you can question Ribagorda's involvement as well because, yes, he was a journalist, yes, he was doing an undercover investigation, but did he take it too far? Should
Right.
he have exposed the Spanish team prior to the Paralympics? My opinion being absolutely.
Once you have a championships under your belt, like a Europeans, you've proved your point.
Other athletes with intellectual disabilities did pay the price, though, because for the next 2 Paralympics, the ID category was banned. There was no ID events in '04 and '08. And Ines, who is now called Virtus, was working this whole time with the IPC to say, "No, we mean it. We're gonna fix this." They finally agreed in 2009 to bring back the category for London 2012, only in swimming and athletics and table tennis. It was agreed in 2009 that rowing would be an option, but I don't think the Rowing Federation actually ever made that happen. So we only still today have swimming, athletics, and table tennis in the intellectual disability category. So a system was put into place at the time where you assess a person's ability to use public transportation, handle money, dress appropriately for the weather. We've taken out the IQ test because IQ has been shown not to be as reliable. Athletes have to be evaluated by an independent psychologist, and that report is reviewed by an additional group of psychologists as part of an eligibility committee. After that eligibility is established, then a second level of classification is done to determine whether the person's intellectual disability impairs the athlete's ability to compete. So things like strategic thinking, focus, quick thinking on a court. So it actually has become incredibly onerous to qualify for this classification.
Wow.
And yet people still question it. And that's why we haven't seen this expansion of ID in Paralympics. Plus, something that came up a lot in what I was reading, and we've talked about with some people in the Paralympic movement, does ID belong in the Paralympics? And there is a lot of conflict about whether athletes with intellectual disabilities belong in the Paralympics. And as we said earlier, Special Olympics and Paralympics are very different. And do we want to add to the confusion that there already is in the public view of the two? So there's that question in the Paralympic movement, do we even want this category?
God, it's so interesting.
And
And just so tough to deal with.
so in London 2012, when it came back, 120 athletes competed in that intellectually disabled category. And Paris 2024, that number had only grown to about 160.
Wow.
So it's not something that is being encouraged in the Paralympic movement. What was really funny to me in that the precise number for that ID category, depending on where you read for Paris, will be 157 to 164. And I think that adds to this category is just not respected and looked at and analyzed in the Paralympic movement as a whole. And I think it goes back to the Spanish basketball team.
Wow. Oh, man. I mean, it's an interesting situation, not one that anybody wants to deal with, I would think. Like, it's so demoralizing to find out that a team has cheated in such an underhanded way. Like, you want a gold medal that badly that you wanna say, "Just pretend having an intellectual disability." It's confounding on so many ways. Also confounding is our sport of cycling. No, this is not all bad. I will say this. This is not everything in cycling is gonna make you cry, but because it's July right now and the Tour de France is on, so that is why it's a good time to talk about road cycling at Sydney 2000. Not that I want to, because knowing what we know now, some of this is painful, but not all of it. So just put on your bike helmet, everyone. Let's hope we don't crash. So road cycling happened near the end of Sydney 2000. So I want to talk about the four road events in chronological order instead of splitting it up men's and women's. First, we had the women's road race on September 26th, then the men's road race, which was the next day. Then we had the women's and men's road time trial that both took place on the same day, which was September 30th. And that's the penultimate day of the game. So we are about done with Sydney here. All four races took place on roughly the same course. So for the road race, it's a 17.1 kilometer loop, and it starts at Moore Park by the Sydney Cricket Grounds. And this is about 6.5 kilometers south of the Opera House, if you want to orient that. It starts by the Sydney Cricket Grounds, goes east through the Centennial Parklands, and then to the coast at Bronte Beach and loops back around. So this is a course that is pretty flat. There's a little bit of climbing, but it's mostly technical with a lot of turns, and that required the cyclists to slow down to get them right. It does have power climbs, including one that's about a kilometer long. And then there's our descents where cyclists could be going up to 90 kilometers an hour. It's an interesting course. I would say that also meant that on the flip side, there's not a whole lot of opportunity to break away. There's also not a lot of places where you can recover if you're tired. So for the women's road race, we are on the fifth time that women have been cycling in the Olympics. They started in LA 84. In terms of equality, we're still nowhere near the men. The course is much shorter. There are fewer cyclists. So the women are racing 8 laps of this 17-kilometer course. So they have a total of 119.7 kilometers. That is almost half of what the men are cycling. And there are 57 women in the road race compared to 154 men. Yeah, it's tough. So let's look at some of the big names in the field. We've got defending gold medalist Jeannie Longo Ciprelli of France, who is cycling at her fifth Olympics at the age of 41. And remember,
Nice.
this is the fifth iteration of the games. Longo is a massively successful cyclist, but the Olympics have not always been good to her. In 84, she was in the lead group and was involved in a collision in the last few hundred meters that left her in sixth place. And it's interesting because you can watch this, and Eric Heiden is doing commentary on this race. And there are six racers, and they cut to a different angle, and all of a sudden there are five, and you hear him go, "Where's Longo?" And nobody. That's it. That's it. Then at Seoul 88, a month ahead of time, she broke her hip. Still raced at the games, but she finished 20
Ow. Ow.
finished 21st in that race. And then she finally reached the podium at Barcelona in 1992, but it was silver, and that was not enough for her. Longo was one of the best cyclists in the world, but she was not liked very much on on the tour because she was extremely competitive, and she also had an inclination to do her own thing. And that meant even if like training wise or sharing knowledge or being even on the course, like she was going to do her own thing. That's what she did in Atlanta, 1996. She did not join the team for acclimatization training in Atlanta because everyone was getting used to the humidity. She went to Colorado for altitude training instead. That paid off. She took the gold in Atlanta and followed up with a silver in the time trial. So she is back in Sydney to defend her medals, but the course is not suited to her style and she could be in trouble here. Sydney 2000 is also the comeback for Dutch writer Leontine Zalar van Morsel, who is from the Netherlands. She is a prior Olympian. She was in 1992 and is back for 2000. A little bit about her: she stands out from the other riders on the on the circuit too, but that's because she does not look very sporty. She does not have short hair like other girls. She wears makeup on her bike. She likes to look good. And being a girly girl was not something that the other cyclists really got into. And she wasn't really accepted in the racing community. But she started cycling in the 80s. And so by the late 80s, early 90s, she is making her a name for herself on the bike. And there are some differing accounts of what happens next. One account said she wanted to be as fit and skinny as Jeannie Longo, so she put herself on a strict diet.
So that she wasn't eating too many Van Morsels?
Oh my gosh. Mm.
I've been sitting here for a minute
Oh
trying to
my
come up with how I could
gosh.
get that in,
Oh
and
my
you just
gosh.
handed it to
Well,
me.
exactly. Another account said that a Dutch cycling official told her that she would be a better hill climber if she lost a little weight. So she did lose a little weight and she won the 1992 Tour de France Femmes. She also went to Barcelona and competed in the road race and track individual pursuit, but there her highest placement was 8th. She won the 1993 Tour de France, and by now she is training 6 hours a day on no food. And by 1994, she has gone from 145 pounds to 95 pounds, and her body is done.
She needs a lot of Van Morsels.
She had a long
Oh,
struggle
that
with
poor girl.
anorexia, yes.
Oh,
She did manage to get herself healthy, though, and in '96 started riding for fun, and 2 years later decided to start competing, won 2 consecutive world time trials, and here we are, it's Sydney 2000, and she wants gold.
I'm already cheering for her. Anyone who
Well,
comes back from an eating disorder in sports, because you know they have so much pressure. We've talked about this a million times.
mhm.
I'm like, okay, you win.
Right, and eating disorders are tough to begin with. So
Yes.
to add that other layer of competitiveness and where you're constantly being compared to other people, it's just another level. It's amazing. So she is back. She started her Sydney 2000 experience on the track. She raced in the pursuit and the points race there. In the pursuit, she broke a world record in the semis, took gold in the final. In the points race, she was sitting in 5th and moved up to silver in the final sprint. So she is already having a good games. So we have Longo and Van Morsel as the ones to watch on the road. Also in the mix here is Australian Anna Wilson, who is ranked 2nd in the world at this point. And for the last 4 years, she has been dreaming of winning the Olympics at home.
Yeah, home field advantage. You love
Exactly,
that.
exactly. So from the start of this race, everyone goes hard because it is a one-day race. It's about 15 degrees Celsius, so it's pretty cool, not what they expected. Slight tailwind. But by the 3rd lap, the race conditions just got horrible. It started to pour rain. There were lots of crashes, and the rain may have kept the field close, or the riders didn't go out hard enough because so many people were at the front for the last half of the race. And by the end, the group in the final sprint was 24 riders. Yeah, usually you have a handful, but now we're 24 strong, anybody's race. Who comes out on top with the help of her teammates? Van Morsel had the strongest sprint when it counted. She edged everyone at the finish for gold, and I believe the money she got from the Netherlands, she decided to split it with her teammates.
Oh, see, I knew I liked her.
There was a photo finish for silver and bronze, with Hanka Kupfernagel of Germany edging out Diana Žilutė of Lithuania for the bronze. Anna Wilson finished fourth. Surprised that the peloton did not go out a little harder because so many riders were strong at the end. And Longo Ciprelli was in the second group of sprinters, finishing 6 seconds behind and a disappointing 26th. And she blamed the cold weather for sapping her strength. So we have gold goes to Leonine Zalar van Morsel from Netherlands, silver to Hanka Kupfernagel from Germany, and bronze to Diana Žilutė. In the men's road race next day, we are in an interesting time for men's cycling. Sporting Intelligence later called it the EPO era due to all of the doping that happened in the sport. So, what's going on at the Olympics? Let's look at the names again. 1996 road race gold medalist Pascal Richard from Switzerland did not make the Swiss team this year, so we will have a new gold medalist. American Lance Armstrong, he is in his second Olympics. And getting into Lance's big story, in 1996, he started the year as the world number one. Huge deal in American cycling. He did not do well at Atlanta in 1996. He was 6th in the time trial, 12th in the road race, and that fall, he was diagnosed with stage 3 testicular cancer. After surgery and chemo, he went back to training in 1997. He also started the Live Strong Foundation, which, if you wonder where our rubber bracelets that promote any kind of cause came from, that is where they started. Everybody had yellow bracelets. I had a yellow bracelet. Did you?
I had a yellow bracelet.
Mhm. Yeah, so you could get yellow bracelets for the Livestrong Foundation. Cycling-wise, he has signed up with Team US Postal Service and did not do that well that year. 1998, he's getting a couple major top 5 finishes, and in 1999, he won the first of 7 consecutive Tour de France titles. His main rival during this time is German Jan Ullrich, who races for Team Deutsche Telekom. Ullrich took second in the 1996 Tour de France, and he won it in 97 when Lance is still recovering. Ullrich is a sprint specialist. He's controversial on the field because he does not train as much as everyone else. He is also really excited about off-season and celebrates the off-season very well, has a reputation for gaining weight and not really training. So 2000, he comes back from the off season, does not do well for the beginning of the season. He finishes second to Lance Armstrong a lot in the Tour de France, but he is ready for his first Olympics. This is the second Olympics that pro cyclists are allowed at the Games. You will see this pro team influence play out here at Sydney, although you won't see it on their bikes because they have to cover up the team names with stickers. The men had better weather than the women, so there was some aggressive riding early on. And because cycling is a team sport with individual results, you've got countrymen helping each other. And with this pro element, you have pro teammates helping each other out, no matter what country they're from.
Right, because most of the pro teams are multicultural, they're
Yes.
multi-countries. You don't
Yes.
generally have, on that Deutschland Telekom, you will have an American, you will have a Frenchman, you will have a couple Germans. Same thing with the US Post Office. It was not a purely American team. So you
No,
have this we haven't gotten to talk to anybody about that, if that still plays an influence.
that's a good question. It's a
Yeah,
good
we'll go
question.
back to that when we talk to some more cyclists.
So, with 3.5 laps to go, Ulrich made his way up to the lead group, and on the penultimate climb, he and his Deutsche Telekom teammates, Andreas Kloden from Germany and Alexander Vinokurov from Kazakhstan, they take off and they leave everyone else behind. And with about 3 kilometers left, the three of them have a little conversation and decided the finishing order. Jan Ulrich sped off. The other two decided not to chase. Ulrich won gold. Vinokurov, who's a good sprinter, took the silver, and Kloden finished a few seconds later behind with the bronze, while the two countries split medals. Team Deutsche Telekom swept the podium.
I was just gonna ask, I wonder how that was received at the time in the Olympic movement.
It's a good question, and I couldn't get into that element.
Right,
I
because
should because I And how things play out, you gotta wonder what they really think. Pro cycle I mean, they still let pros in, so they didn't close that door, but you have to wonder if associations got a talking to about countries. It'd be interesting to look at the Olympic history and see how that develops a little bit more. I mean, I will say this, I don't pay attention to men's cycling very much anymore. After Lance Armstrong, after Floyd Landis was really put the nail in the coffin for me when he was caught doping or admitted to doping during the Tour de France after his major, major comeback. That was it. I was done watching pro cycling, and I might look at Tour de France results just because it's a thing, but I don't pay attention the way I used to. And
Agreed.
it's gonna be a lot for me to come back. And we don't get cyclists really at the media summit either.
Right, because they're on a pro tour.
Right.
We've spoken I don't think we've ever spoken to a
Oh,
man.
no, no, no.
No, only women.
Yes. So, we'll have to work on getting ourselves geared up for that, and maybe we can figure that out. On the list. Cycling News had a great moment from this race, though. So, around Bronte Road near the beach, a big group of residents joined together to watch the spectacle, but they didn't know anybody who was racing. They weren't into cycling. They were just like, it's outside our door, let's watch. So, they decided to pick one name off the start list and cheer for that cyclist. And that lucky rider was Jazzy Fernandez Garcia from Guam, Guam's only rider. So the group made a giant sign for him out of a bedsheet, and they cheered for him every time he went by, including Jazzy, 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 oi, oi, oi. Poor Garcia, he falls behind pretty quickly, and he's gonna be lapped. And once you're lapped, you are out of the race. Once he realizes that the inevitable is going to happen, he waved to his fans when he rode by, and on the next lap, he rolled along to thank them and take pictures with the sign. And to me, that the one redeeming thing off the men's road race, this is the best kind of Olympic moment. And listeners, if you are going to a games and you go to a road race or a marathon, make a sign for one of the people from a very small country that is not going to do well, and you will have fun making their day. Once again, the podium here, Jan Ullrich from Germany wins gold. Alexander Vinokurov from Kazakhstan is silver. And bronze goes to Andreas Kloden from Germany, all three from Team Deutsche Telekom. So the time trial course is shorter than the road race, but it's along the same route. Basically, it cut out the beach section, which cut out the main climb of the race, and it did a more windy route in Centennial Park, which put in more turns and technicality. So now we are making it more of a power course versus more of a rhythm course. So if you're somebody who just flat out sprints, you are stuck doing like 30 turns per lap. And that means you're turning and accelerating, or turning and climbing, or turning and descending. And that's a lot more technical. For a time trial, it wasn't very flat. There's a 2 kilometer stretch that looks flat, but it's an uphill. So that was also tough on the racers. And British cyclist Chris Boardman, who was a former time trial world champ, did not love the course so much that he was quoted by Reuters saying, "The Olympic time trial needs more than this. It's not ideal, and I hate it with a passion. There are a lot of lumps and a lot of turns, which will suit the road racers in the time trial." Well, women did 2 laps of the course with the best rider starting last. Men do 3 laps of this course. And even though they set out at 90-second intervals, the fact that they had to do multiple laps means that there could be some traffic, particularly for the men, once you get in all these waves coming out. For the women, it's only their second time trial. Atlanta 1996 was the first time they got to do a time trial in the Olympics. In the mix, we have defending champ Russian Zulfiya Zabirova, who is still in good form, but we also still have Leontin Zalar van Morsel, who has already bagged hardware, having a great Olympics. But could she be tired at this point? Last race. But no, she's not. Let's just stop that right there. She is in fine form. She finishes 37 seconds ahead of silver place, gets her 4th medal of the games. So the silver medalist in the time trial is a surprise. Coming out of nowhere, American Mary Holden. She got revenge on a lousy road race that she did not finish. She had a flat tire. She got a crash. She had to change her bike. She got another flat tire, and she was done. That was poor Holden's race, but she's a time trial specialist. She also has criterium skills, and that helped her maneuver really well through all of these turns. And while most people were surprised by this result, she wasn't. And she told Cycling News, quote, I had been visualizing this race the whole year. I kept thinking if I have a great day, I could get a medal. I think that maybe I was the only one who believed that besides my boyfriend. It worked out today. I can't believe it.
Proud Mary keep on turning.
I know. And then a French legend, Jeannie Longo, Ciprelli, made up for her road race and came from behind to take the bronze away from Australian Anna Wilson.
Oh, she got 2 fourths?
2 force at a home
Oh.
games. Such a bummer for Wilson. The bronze gives Longo a full set of Olympic medals,
Oh, perfect.
to which she said, quote, "It will look nice on my dining room table."
It does. You know what? I am totally about the full set. I love when people have a full set and then can display it. It's beautiful.
And what about our defending champion, Russian Zulefa Zabrova? She finished 12th. So gold goes to Leontine Zalar von Morsel, silver to Mary Holden from the USA, and bronze to Jeannie Longo Ciprelli. So over to the men, last race of the games. This is Jan Ullrich's specialty. So after the gold in the road race, he has high expectations. He is very, very pumped. Lance Armstrong is also expected to give Ullrich a run for his money.
And
These
Lance
2
Armstrong is very pumped in a different way.
And so these 2 are starting last. They are 37th and 38th, so they would know the times they'd have to beat along the way. And the time to beat was set by 34-year-old Russian Vyacheslav Ekimov. Ekimov was inspired to take up cycling from watching Moscow 1980, and he had been part of the USSR's Olympic team at Seoul 1988, winning gold in the track cycling team pursuit. So then the government allowed him to turn professional in 89. So he joined the tour, made his name as a sprinter. In 2000, he is on Team US Postal Service to ride as one of Lance Armstrong's lieutenants. That year's tour was really tough on Ekimov, and he decided not to take time off between that and the Olympics. He instead went to altitude to train and trained in isolation. And initially, that strategy looked like it was not going to pay off because in the road race, he finished 74th. But his time trial was magical. He rode in the second wave of riders, and fortunately for him, he didn't have a very strong wind, so he could manage that. And any tailwind benefits that anybody got were negated by a lot of trees on the course. So you couldn't hope that the tailwind would help you. The time Ekimov had to beat was 58:52. His time, 57:40. He's over a minute faster. So Ulrich has a shot. He's 6 seconds ahead at the second to last time check, but that final stretch sapped him and he lost 14 seconds. So he finished 8 seconds behind. Lance Armstrong, feeling good, going hard. Not his day. So
Oopsies.
Ekimov wins a surprise gold. Ullrich took the silver, 8 seconds behind. Lance Armstrong won the bronze. So Ekimov wins gold again, 12 years after his first gold medal. Silver goes to Jan Ullrich and bronze goes to Lance Armstrong. But we are not done with this particular podium yet because what about drugs? So we know now that this time period is part of the EPO era, the EPO era. EPO is a hormone that helps the body produce more red blood cells, so muscles get more oxygen and athletes go faster. And at the beginning of August 2000, so we're talking a couple months before the games, the IOC Medical Commission, again vice chaired by Jacques Rogue, approved urine and blood tests to detect EPO. And both the urine and blood tests had to be positive for an athlete to be found guilty of doping. But because they were expensive, they did them one at a time. First, athletes would do the blood test, which, according to Cycling News, cost $600 to $800 Australian dollars per test. And if that was positive, they would do the 2,000 Australian dollar urine test. And if that was positive, the athlete would be sanctioned. However, EPO is a drug that works over a long period of time, and the blood test would be able to detect EPO 3 weeks after an injection. The urine test only works for the previous 72 hours. So basically the test isn't going to be effective if it's taken at competition time because people will take EPO and be off of it for a long time and they'll still feel the effects of the drug. On top of that, the doping control procedure was that specific countries would be tested out of competition, but not everyone. And of course, the Dutch noted that if you're not on the testing list, that leaves the door wide open for you to do anything. Surprisingly, during the games, no cyclists were found to have doped that I could find. And in pre-competition testing, 4 cyclists were disqualified for the games. So they could not come to the games because they tested positive.
I'm actually surprised anybody at this time was getting caught for anything.
Oh, yeah, that's
That's
very true.
because just the way what we know now and the sophistication of so many different systems. So I don't know if you have this, but I would think that the 4 athletes that got caught were either very small programs or didn't or weren't professionals.
I do not have it, but they were
Okay.
smaller. They were not big names to my recollection.
Yeah.
So the Sydney Morning Herald reported that 2,758 athletes, including all the gold medalists from Sydney, did blood and urine tests during the games. 310 were randomly chosen for EPO testing. Those all came back negative. But to be clean during the games, athletes would have had to been off EPO for at least 10 days ahead of time. Off testing through the blood test found 7 positives. So one of the scientists who developed the blood test estimated that based on this sample, 60 or more of those initial 2758 athletes would have tested positive for using EPO ahead of the games. The IOC did not do anything with this information because of the legal ramifications of an off test. And those athletes who tested positive in this sampling will probably never be identified. They got anonymized, so we're never going to know this. That said, we still have issues with doping in cycling. Doping rumors had swirled around Lance Armstrong and the US Postal Service team for years. And in August 2012, the US Anti Doping Agency released the results of a major investigation against Lance Armstrong, which banned him for life and disqualified all of his results from August 1, 1998 onwards as a result of the US Postal Service cycling team doping conspiracy. There is a lot about that. Future Olympians will have problems as well. Armstrong did not appeal this and said he did not dope. A couple months later in October, the IOC says they will wait for the International Cycling Union to determine what they're going to do in response. And then, even though Armstrong does not dope, according to him, in January 2013, he goes on Oprah and admits that he doped extensively. And how big of a situation this is just incredible.
Because not only did he dope, let's
Right.
let's just take a second to say
Yes.
what a horrible, horrible, horrible human being Lance Armstrong is.
Well, yeah. I mean, so competitive and just bully, and it just sounded like a horrible time.
You know, ruined other people's careers, attacked other people publicly who accused him of what he was doing.
Yes.
So we have absolutely zero love for Lance
No.
Armstrong.
No.
And
Yeah.
how heartbreaking this was with that Live Strong and how he had supported kids with cancer and oh,
Yeah, it was just a horrible time, and I just remember you were so in awe of him, just you as a person, and I read his books. I just you felt so much for him and what he was doing for cancer and how he beat it and what an inspiration he was, and for all of it to come crashing down and just be at the same time so duplicitous. It just you lost so much trust in the sport, and I don't know if the sport really has ever gotten that back. So, after Armstrong goes on Oprah, the IOC stripped him of his bronze, and they vacated the bronze in the official results. They demanded he return the medal, which Armstrong did in September 2013, so much later in the year. I did ask why the IOC why the medal was not reallocated, because my hunch is that he did not test positive during the game, so they didn't want to do a reallocation, and they didn't consider it to be like a standard doping situation. But I did not get any response from the IOC. Keeping on with the doping, in 2017, a Dutch doctor said he purchased and gave EPO to Leontine Zalar van Morsel ahead of Sydney. She denies it. She said she went to that doctor for diet and training advice, considering that she had had anorexia and wanted to make sure she was okay. This has turned into a he said, she said. There's no proof of anything. So hopefully, that is all okay. Jeannie Longo was a pretty polarizing figure during this whole time. She had some issues with doping in her career. She tested positive for ephedrine in 1987, served some time off, and in 2011, her husband was accused of buying EPO. And Ekimov was a part of the U.S. Postal Service team. He has not admitted to doping. Teddy Cutler, writing for Sporting Intelligence, put Ekimov in its cycle of suspicion, saying that he was a confirmed doper who never got punished. The cycling, try to put a link to this in the show notes, because Sporting Intelligence has this giant photo illustration of all of the teams and everyone on them and how many people were doping. And it was something like at least 65% or more. And then that sounds even low to me now, but so many people were doping. So many people were confirmed, suspected, but not confirmed. It's very, very rare to find a clean rider during this time. So where are they now? Van Morsel continued racing after Sydney. At Athens 2004, she wanted to defend her 3 gold medals. In the track individual pursuit, she took bronze. In the road race, with 2 laps to go, she fell and sustained a concussion. But 3 days later, she won the time trial by 24 seconds. She retired soon thereafter with 4 golds, 1 silver, and 1 bronze. Was the most successful female cyclist in Olympic history until track specialist Dame Laura Kenny won her 5th gold at Tokyo 2020. Leontine had a daughter in 2007. In 2008, she established her own foundation to support eating disorder-related charities. And then in 2015, the foundation opened its own drop-in center that's called Leontine Huis, which helps people with eating disorders and their loved ones. So she's doing good in the community. At Sydney, Jeannie Longo Ciprelli was asked if that was her last Olympics. It was certainly thought to be, because she was 41 at the time. And at the time, Cycling News quoted her as saying, "The Olympic Games in 2004 is in Athens, and I don't like the pollution." But 4 years later, you find her in Athens. And then 4 years after that, she was in even a more polluted city called Beijing 2008. And at both of those games, she was off the podium, although she was 4th in the time trial at Beijing. 4th. And this is 2008. She has been cycling in every Olympics that the
She's almost
women
50
Yeah.
at that point.
She was still competing in the French national championships as late as 2016. And now apparently she still does age group racing, and she is in her 60s. I mean, this is a woman who does not know how to quit. Jan Ullrich never beat Lance Armstrong at the Tour de France. He continued racing for several more years. He competed at Athens 2004, was 18th in the road race, 6th in the time trial. In 2006, he got banned from the Tour de France for doping suspicions. He retired in 2007. Since then, he's had issues with drugs and alcohol, almost died in 2018 because of this. In 2023, on an Amazon Prime documentary, he admitted to doping, saying he started in 1996. So do we open up this can of worms again, IOC? I don't know.
I think this goes back to when they talk about the East German swimmers from the 70s.
Yeah,
It's
right?
kind of like we could wipe out these entire podiums,
Mhm.
but the people, I see them vacating medals rather than reallocating, because how far down the list do you have to go
Right.
to find someone who is actually clean?
Ekimov, he competed at Athens 2004 too, and he's still old. He, along with 69 other riders, did not finish in the ridiculously hot road race at Athens. He placed second to American Tyler Hamilton in the time trial. In 2012, when Hamilton admitted he doped during Athens, Ekimov got upgraded to gold. But we still have doping suspicions swirl him because he was on US Postal Service. It's all very complicated, and Tyler Hamilton wrote a book about it, and Ekimov said Tyler Hamilton just wanted the money from the book. We're just never gonna know everything, I think.
It's kinda like lies, lies, and cycling.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So Ekimov got the gold in Athens 2004. His last year on the pro tour was 2006. He estimates that in his 26-year pro career, including training and competition, he rode almost 1,000,000 kilometers on his bike. So he is currently president of the Russian Cycling Federation now. And that is cycling at Sydney 2000. So many swirls, so many great stories, so many suspicions.
Yeah.
But hopefully we can remember the good. Don't know.
Yeah.
Source list for you.
Well, there is a fantastic ESPN 30 for 30 on the story. So I also have that and Yahoo Sports, several BBC articles, Daily Mail, Australian Broadcasting Corporation, NBC Sports, New York Times, the Paralympics website, RTE, World Para Athletics, Athletes Without Limits, Time Magazine, The Smart Set, and a fantastic academic article by Professor Jan Burns called Is There Space on the Podium for Us All?
Ooh. For me, I have ESPN, the official report from the Sydney 2000 Olympics, cycling news, several articles from them, servicecours.be, Associated Press, Skoda We Love Cycling, The Guardian, several articles there, history.com, Leontin Heiss, NPR, Olympedia, Olympics.com, Le Monde, People, Pro Cycling Stats, Russian Cycling Federation, Sydney Morning Herald, Der Spiegel, and Sporting Intelligence, The Move Podcast, Time Magazine, USADA, The Complete Book of the Olympics 2008 edition by David Walachinsky and Jamie Loki, and another ESPN article. So, yes, this was a big one.
For all the cheating and horrible scandals from 2000, because now we've talked about Marion Jones, we've talked about these two.
And
It was still
gymnastics, I mean,
and
like
gymnastics, and yet we always come back to Sydney was amazing,
I know.
which tells you just how amazing everything was for us to forget all of these other things that happened. So, Australians, man, did you do an amazing job because none of this was your fault.
No, and you just got stuck with the aftermath. Next month, we've gotta get some more amazing stories. We have to find something more.
And we promise never to dope or cheat in podcasting.
Exactly. So that will do it for this episode. Do let us know what you remember from Sydney 2000, and do you remember this horrible stuff?
And we do love hearing from you. You can chat with us and other listeners on our Facebook group, Keep the Flame Alive Podcast. Email us at flamealivepod@gmail.com. The voicemail and text line is always open at 208-352-6348. That's 208-FLAME-IT. And if you need more Olympics and Paralympics in your life, and who doesn't, sign up for our weekly newsletter at flamealivepod.com. We'll have a link to that in the show notes.
Next week, it's episode 400, so you know
Woot
what
woot.
that means.
Virtual party.
That's right.
I can't believe you made a sounder for it.
I also did this.
Shushy. That I do say all the time, don't I?
And so next week it will be our
virtual party.
And we will talk about some of our favorite memories from the show, hear your thoughts on the Olympics and Paralympics. We really hope you can join us. If you can make it to the taping, that's tinyurl.com/400party. That's the number 400 party. If not, please tune in and celebrate while you listen. And we can celebrate this beautiful community that you all have helped us build together. And thank you so much for listening. Until next time, keep the flame alive.